we're going to get started with our first talk of the day. Introducing someone who needs no introductions if you have been in the space. Presenting Vitalik, who's going to be giving the opening talk now. Can we have a round of applause?
Okay. Oh. Okay. Hello. Hello. Welcome. Welcome to the Duck Day Berlin. Okay. Everyone say quack. Quack quack. Okay. Welcome to Duck Day. So, what is Duck Day? Okay. Great. Okay. So, what is Duck? Right. So. Basically, the way that I think about what DAC is that it's the three kind of most important parts of it, which are that it's defensive, decentralized acceleration, and I also added in, I think, in my original formulations, like differential, and democratic. And basically, it's about combining these three different aspects when we think about the future of the kinds of technology that we want to build. And the way that I think about why DAC is necessary is basically by asking, well, what happens if you try DAC but with any one of the three legs removed? Right, and so we can start by basically saying, well, what if we have decentralized or democratic, but and acceleration, but without being defensive? So basically, without caring about whether the technology that we're building increases people's ability to be protected from threats, or whether it makes it easier for people to attack each other, and not being differential. So generally, not kind of really caring too much whether we're accelerating in one way or accelerating the other way. And I kind of label this ideology as being sort of EAC but open source. And I think there's a lot of people that definitely very sincerely kind of generally have this kind of approach to technology. The second corner of the triangle is acceleration and differential defensive, but without being decentralized and democratic. And so this is what I call a national security act. So Nick Bostrom back in 2019 published this paper where famously he talked about the vulnerable world hypothesis, and basically settled on the solution, or a proposed solution being to require people to wear freedom tags and having global universal surveillance. And more generally, there's a lot of milder versions of this that basically focus on dealing with threats, focus on increasing safety, but in a way that really centralizes power, in a way that decreases freedom, and a lot of the time actually in a way that ends up decreasing safety. And then the third corner of the triangle is decentralized and democratic, and being defensive but not accelerating, right? And this is what I call the decel, what a lot of people call the decel end of the country, or of the triangle. This is the ideal of a society where everything basically stays at 19th century cottage farmer level, and we have all of the nice parts of cottage farmer life, but at the same time, somehow nobody dies of typhoid fever. So it's an approach that I think is really incoherent once you think about it deeply, and in the context of a world which is competitive. Actually following this philosophy sincerely basically just means that people on the other two sides of the triangle are going to just run over you. And so basically, and so I claim that it's not a workable approach to the future of technology for a couple of reasons. And so DAC is basically trying to really care about all three of those things, right? Being defensive, being decentralized, and acceleration. Jason Crawford, who is really important in the progress studies movement in America. He presented at DAC Day San Francisco. He made this an analogy to American history, and I think you can extend it to Western history in terms of what kinds of themes have been emphasized in technology. And so the approximate idea is 1850 to 1910 is basically EAC but open source, and emphasizing technological progress, emphasizing individual liberty, but at the same time not really caring about like which particular direction technology is going. 1910 to 1970 is, of course, National Security Act and the era of really powerful governments and really powerful militaries. And as we know, this actually ended up making lots and lots of people's nations much less secure. And then in 1970 to 2020 is kind of the decel era, the kind of hipster back to the land. Like let's try to make sure we're not changing things and kind of not avoid harming things first kind of era. And so the theory is, well, maybe now actually is the time for the DEAC era that actually does care about all three of these things. So hold on. So spheres of DEAC, right? So basically, in the blog post that I outlined in the last couple of years, so I kind of split up technology into and especially defensive technology into these different areas, right? Where the x-axis is basically world of atoms versus world of bits, and then the world of atoms you spread out into the micro and the macro. So physical resilience on the macro side, biodefense on the micro side, and then on the right in the world of bits, kind of splitting it into cyber defense, so protecting against hacks, what we think of as being computer security, situations where we as reasonable human beings can agree on who the attacker is, but incorrectly written running code possibly doesn't. And then info defense, which we think about as being things like scams, things like misinformation, things like super persuasion, like basically areas where one man's harmful misinformation is another man's unfairly maligned valid point. And so we have to actually think about these things in different tools, and it's really important to kind of avoid solutions that actually over-empower one particular elite to decide what the solutions are. And also added recently this survive and thrive axis that basically shows that there's actually a lot of synergies between technologies that reduce risks in low trust environments and technologies that increase our ability to have excellent lives in higher trust environments. One example of this, info defense and collaboration technology, basically, so if we think about community notes on Twitter, so who here has seen community notes? Who here has heard of Polis? So poll.is, it's this tool for people in organizations or generally in kind of smaller social contexts, kind of offer their perspectives on a bunch of questions, and then it tries to figure out what the clusters are, and it tries to identify the points of commonality between the clusters. And these are technologies that are designed for very different environments, right? Polis is generally designed for people who are roughly in the same tribe, roughly agree on a lot of common things, or at least have some common assumptions of good faith, but at the same time still need to come to even better forms of consensus. And then community notes is designed for people to be used by people who are often literally at war with each other. But if you look at the the underlying mechanism in both cases involves identifying points, statements that are agreed upon by groups of people that normally otherwise heavily disagree with each other, right? And so the same underlying mathematical tool actually gets used both for the survive version of info defense and for the thrive version of info defense. And there's a lot of tie-ins, for example, between anti-pandemic biotech and longevity biotech, and even BCIs. A lot of tie-ins between making open hardware that's better and making open hardware that's more verifiable, that's defended against hacks. So a lot of good tie-ins between survive and thrive. So what will you see today, right? So DEAC Day today, a lot on privacy protection, also quite a lot on the social institutions that are friendly to thriving of DEAC, right? So basically not just thinking about the kind of direct question of what are the DEAC things to build, but also the systemic question of what are institutions that can be built to try to make more DEAC-like things happen by default, right? What are higher leverage things that can be done so that there's a lot more than 200 people who are working on DEAC aligns technologies and doing so very effectively. Resilience in food, resilience in communications, open source defensive biotech against pandemics, potentially usable for a lot more things. So really exciting day, and I think a lot of very interesting topics. So hope that everyone enjoys. Thank you.